The Panama's construction workers union mobilized in rejection of the reforms to the security fund, which affects the benefits of public employees. The Brazilian government announced its entry into the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC+. And the Russian government expressed Wednesday its interest in creating conditions for negotiating stable relations with the United States. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The Panama's construction workers union mobilized in rejection of the reforms to the security fund, which affects the benefits of public employees. The union announced a series of protests for 24 hours to demand the release of the workers arrested for demanding the repeal of the law by the legislature. The workers said that they will take their demonstrations to the National Assembly, where the bill will be debated, to express the union's rejection.
Dictator Mulino, the construction workers are not criminals. We call all Panamanians to the Great March. Tomorrow, Thursday 20th at 4 p.m., starting at Porras Park. Freedom for the political prisoners.
Meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, opens Wednesday in Barbados. The Caribbean heads of state will meet for 3 days to discuss various issues such as food and nutritional security, climate change, and the current challenges in Haiti, among other topics of interest. The meeting will be led by the bloc's President and Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, and CARICOM Secretary General Carla Bennett. The meeting was convened under the theme Strength in Unity, Forging Caribbean Resilience, Inclusive Growth, and Sustainable Development. The Cuban government announced that the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, allocated more than $120 million to destabilize the island. According to Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez, the government of the United States has financially backed multiple initiatives that seek to destroy the Cuban Revolution. The island's top diplomat also rejected the pressures to undermine the nation's economy promoted by Washington. The Mexican government assured that U.S. drone flights over its territory are part of a cooperation strategy agreed between the two governments. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has reaffirmed her position on security cooperation with the United States. The president reiterated that national sovereignty is not a risk and that she is not afraid of the statements made by U.S. President Donald Trump. Sheinbaum stressed that any action would be carried out in accordance with the principles of respect and coordination that government relations between Mexico and the United States.
These flights are part of the coordinations. Here with us is the Admiral Secretary for a cooperation that has been going on for a long time between the governments of the United States and Mexico, and many times the request, or I'd rather say, in all cases the request have come from the Mexican government. It's a request for cooperation and for information to deal with security issues. These flights are part of the coordinations. Here with us is the Admiral Secretary.
The Brazilian government announced the South American's entry into the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries Plus. The decision follows the initial announcement made by the Brazilian Minister of Mines and Energy, Alexander Silveira, during the 36th OPEC Plus ministerial meeting, which took place on November 30, 2023, as well as following a series of high-level contact contacts with Saudi Arabia throughout 2024. The move marks Brazil's rise as a major oil power, but puts it under fire, especially in the context of the country's preparation to host the annual United Nations Climate Summit COP30 to be held in November, whose focus is usually on reducing the use of fossil fuels. The Brazilian former president Jair Bolsonaro is facing charges for attempting a coup to state office after his 2022 election defeat. Bolsonaro had been indicted in November 2024 through a report filed by the federal police, which accused him of having full knowledge on the alleged coup plan to prevent President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva from taking office after his electoral victory. The charges filed on Tuesday include an attempting a coup d'état, violent removal of the rule of law, and forming a criminal organization.
Given everything that has already happened and come to light about him, this should have happened a long time ago.
He placed the military at key points to carry out the coup for his own benefit, but thank God who still exists it didn't work.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. China sends humanitarian aid to Gaza and expressed its wish for continued dialogue and international cooperation to solve the conflict with Israel. According to Chinese authorities, the aid includes at least 60,000 emergency packages, 12,000 of which are of food, which will be delivered to the World Food Programme, the Palestinian Red Crescent, and other organizations within the region of Gaza. The spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Wo Yang-kun, pointed out that Beijing's priority is to support Gaza in the face of the humanitarian crisis, but also to ensure that the parties involved reach an agreement. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi advocated at the United Nations Security Council the Palestinians' right to rule their own country and considered it a basic principle to be upheld in any post-conflict scenario.
The situation in the Middle East remains tense and fragile. Gaza and the West Bank are the homeland of the Palestinian people, not a bargaining chip in political trade-offs. Palestinians governing Palestine is an important principle that must be followed in the post-conflict governance of Gaza. It is vital to uphold the two-state solution, press for a comprehensive, just and lasting settlement of the Palestinian question, and bring lasting peace and security to the Middle East.
In Palestine, Israeli forces killed 2 Palestinians in Rafah in southern Gaza on Tuesday in another violation of the ceasefire agreement. Medical officials confirmed that 2 bodies were taken to a nearby hospital after the Israeli tank attack. In this sense, the Israeli army tried to justify the killings by claiming that it had opened fire on a number of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip who were approaching its forces. The attack highlights the Israeli regime's continued disregard for the ceasefire agreement reached with the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas. The continuing siege of the occupied West Bank by Israeli troops and settlers has generated a humanitarian crisis that has resulted in massive displacement in the territory. Experts have noted that Israel's tactics in the West Bank have become almost indistinguishable from those in the Gaza Strip, ransacking homes and expelling residents using ruthless intimidation. In recent weeks, Zionist forces advanced into towns such as Tulkarem, Farah, and Nur Shams, separated separating families and awakening bitter memories of the war for the creation of Israel in 1948. According to figures published by several non-governmental organizations, Israel's military operations in the occupied West Bank have displaced at least 45,000 Palestinians, the largest number since the Middle East War of 1967. The Emir of Qatar arrived in Iran and was welcomed at Tehran's Mehrabad airport as part of his official visit to strengthen historical ties. The Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani held a meeting with Iranian President Massoud Pezeshkian and other senior Iranian officials to strengthen bilateral relations. The topics discussed included politics, the economy, regional issues with a focus on Palestine, as well as the situation in Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria. Qatar had expressed its willingness to mediate between Tehran and Washington following statements by U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who said that Trump would talk to Iran if they suspended its nuclear program. In Japan on Wednesday, Ryuji Kimura, perpetrator of the 2023 attack on former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The Wakayama court sentenced Kimura to 5 charges, including attempted murder and violation of the explosive control law. Defense lawyers argued that the defendant's intention was not to kill the former Prime Minister, but to injure him. However, the prosecution demanded 15 years in prison because an explosive test conducted a month earlier showed that the manufactured weapon had the capacity to kill. The attack on the former minister, from which he escaped unharmed, took place on April 15, 2023 at the port of Wakayama City, where Kishida's speech was scheduled to take place and hundreds of people were waiting to hear them. The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, Rafael Grossi, made his 5th visit to Japan to monitor the land contaminated by the Fukushima disaster and to visit the Kashiwazaki Karima nuclear power plant. Grossi inspected a storage facility for contaminated soil from the 2011 disaster, while the Japanese government is debating how to dispose it. The head of the IAEA will also visit the plant known as KK with a capacity of more than 8,000 megawatts, which has been inoperative since the nuclear shutdown ordered by the Japanese authorities after the atomic disaster. Grossi's visit comes on the same day that Japan approved its new energy plan for the next 5 years. Vietnam's parliament has approved a multi-billion-dollar rail project that will boost trade by linking the country's main northern port to the Chinese border. The $8 billion project won the support of 95% of lawmakers in the National Assembly. The railway will pass through some of Vietnam's manufacturing hubs, where global factories such as Samsung, Foxconn, and Pegatron operate and rely on component supplies from China. The voyage will travel 390 kilometers from the port of Haiphong to the mountainous city of Lao Cai in China's Yunnan province and into the capital city of Hanoi. It should be noted that a large part of this link will be financed by loans granted by the Asian giant. More than 10,000 people displaced by armed conflict in the Democratic Republic of the Congo seek refuge in Burundi. The Burundian authorities reported that searches were being carried out in homes and hotels to ensure that Congolese were in possession of the necessary documents to stay in the country. They also expressed concern about the border between the two countries due to the displacement of people in the midst of the conflict in Goma and Bukavu, and warned of the possibility of the conflict in the Democratic Republic of the Congo spilling over into their country. On the other hand, the authorities pointed to Rwanda as a factor of regional instability. And like this, we have a second short break coming up. But before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Find a short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Russian government expressed Wednesday its interest in creating conditions for negotiating stable relations with the United States. According to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, his government expects to establish conditions for talks to address issues of Russian-U.S. security and strategic stability. Lavrov said that during the dialogue held in Saudi Arabia, the Trump administration showed interest in removing the obstacles to the restoration of relations and moving towards normalization of the relationship between both nations. The Russian top diplomat also praised the U.S. president's statements about NATO expansions being the root causes of the conflict in Ukraine.
President Trump, when it comes to statements, has mentioned NATO expansion. He is the first, and so far, in my opinion, the only Western leader who has publicly and loudly said that one of the root causes of the Ukrainian situation was the previous administration's pushy line of pulling Ukraine into NATO. None of the Western leaders has ever said this, and he has made this point several times. This is already a signal that he understands our position.
The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, postponed his visit to Saudi Arabia to avoid legitimizing the U.S.-Russia meeting. The president declared that negotiations between the United States and Russia in Saudi Arabia were a surprise for his country. At a press conference with his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in Ankara, he said he postponed the trip to avoid coincidences. Zelensky informed that they have contacted the Saudi authorities to inform them of the change of plans and that they have agreed to hold the meeting on March 10th. Let's go to France now, where the parliament was scheduled to vote on Wednesday on a sixth motion of no confidence presented by the Socialist Party against Prime Minister François Bayrou. The motion's approval requires the support of at least 289 of the 577 deputies of this assembly. So far, Bayrou has gone through 5 motions this year, most of them linked to the state budget. The motion involves a scandal for sexual abuse and physical mistreatment at the Catholic College of Bethlehem, when he was education minister. However, analysts consider unlikely that the motion can reach the needed majority to be approved. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For teleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.